Oh my god, holy crap. How are you guys? What's going on? We're back. And we're back with what made this channel fun for me to begin with and what really makes me want to do a sports channel even at all. And that is a mock draft. As you guys saw from the thumbnail, I got some pretty interesting ideas surrounding some of the latest trade rumors that are going on in the NFL. And boy, I think you guys are going to really like them too. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe so you don't miss anything going forward. I'm going to try to do once a week now with the mock drafts, throw some stuff there in between. But, you know, as we get into like the franchise tags and stuff, it'll start to change the mock drafts quite significantly, I would say. And I would expect some type of movement, perhaps at the number one pick. You'll see that also. It's not really that creative. It kind of is what everyone expects. And I got a couple other trades in there, and we'll talk about those right off the top, and then we'll get into the picks. But let's start with some of those trades, and it's involving the two biggest names on the trade market today, Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Ramsey. So as you can see here, I got two pretty big trades happening. We'll start with Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. I know that there's a lot of stuff surrounding Derek Carr going there, but this is on the assumption that maybe Derek Carr chooses to go to the New Orleans Saints instead. Or even perhaps I would think the Giants have an outside chance here, especially because it seems like he's only asking for $30 to $35 million, and Daniel Jones is apparently asking for north of 40. I could see the Giants maybe figuring out a way to get Derek Carr and seeing him maybe as a better choice simply because he's a cheaper option than using that extra money to sign Saquon Barkley. But the value surrounding Aaron Rodgers is also quite weird. I do have the 13th pick, a second in 2024 and a third in 2025 going to Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, a third round pick this year, and a third round pick in 2024 going to the Jets. That sort of makes up for the big time contract and the short term presence that Aaron Rodgers will have with the Jets. You figure you'll get maybe 2 years from Aaron Rodgers, 3 if you're lucky at this point, the Jets. I think that has to be the assumption. And then the big one is Jalen Ramsey, another guy who I'm looking at. I'm like, what's his trade value? I've seen people, the experts projecting that it's only a second round pick. And I don't know that. That's why I wanted to go to the Bengals. And they give the 28th pick and Sam Hubbard. You know, the Rams have been looking for an edge rusher. They're willing to give up 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. So if they're going to move on from Ramsey, they can get a first-round pick and an edge rusher, and then they give up the 136th overall pick to the Bengals as well. So they find their way into the first round. They get their edge rusher, and they move on from somebody who apparently they're attempting to move on from, which is weird. I guess they just want that draft capital, realizing that they went all in on that Super Bowl, got it, and now they're in a lot of trouble. So, I mean, I understand it, I guess, to a degree. And I think that this is a trade that I think Rams fans would really like because it's really the best of both worlds. And then these are just some of the trades that I did throughout the mock draft just to sort of bring some type of realism to them. The Giants trade up from 25 to 19 with Tampa Bay, giving up 89 and 128. Carolina moves up to 5. Giving up 9, 40, and a third in 2024. They get a 2024 fourth round pick in return. And then the Colts moving up from 4 to 1, giving up the fourth overall pick, obviously a first next year, and a second round pick in 2025. Perhaps it's looked at as an overpayment, but I think that this is the best case scenario for the Colts to try to maintain some type of ability to continue to add players in this draft that they do actually need. And the Bears are not exactly a team that's in a position where they're thinking about winning this upcoming year anyway. So, they get to move back, get the player they're probably going to get anyway, and then they get an extra first and an extra second. They can, start packaging some picks to start moving around the board a bit. And I think it's a good trade for both teams. So here we are. Let's do it. 8x8. Bryce Young, the number 1 pick. CJ Stroud, the number 2 pick. I think that's pretty much locked in. I will address Anthony Richardson going number 5 overall. He apparently is the big wild card who could potentially end up going 1 or 2 instead of either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I think it would be CJ Stroud who would be the odd man out. Jalen Carter going to the Cardinals. That's sort of, again, they drafted Cameron Thomas and Myjah Sanders last year. They lost J.J. Watt. I think they need more of that interior defensive linemen, and Jalen Carter just being, I think, the best player in the draft, not named Bryce Young, helps them with that. Then the Bears get Will Anderson, number 1 edge rusher. I think that's another thing, super straightforward for them. The Raiders grab Will Levis there at 7. Getting their quarterback after losing Derek Carr, of course. And then, again, like I said during the trades, I feel like Derek Carr going to the Saints or the Giants is where that's going to end up, at least in my fantasy world here. Devon Witherspoon going to the Lions. I see this being like that Ahmad Gardner rise, because so many people were on Derek Stingley. I think that was sort of the same thing here. And then Gardner's play started to get recognized during the draft process, and then he accelerated up to the number 4 pick and is now one of the best corners in the entire league. And I think Devon Witherspoon is very similar to that in terms of what his college production was. And then Atlanta grabs Tyree Wilson, edge rusher. I think that it seems the NFL values his tools and his potential over that of Myles Murphy, who's soon to come, but it seems like Tyree Wilson might have found his way to be the number 2 edge rusher in this draft. And I got the Seahawks trading back to 9 and then taking Lucas Van Ness, edge rusher out of Iowa. Now, to me, this is just Seattle being Seattle. I don't have Van Ness over Myles Murphy, who you see going there number 12 to Houston, but Seattle will Seattle in the draft, and they generally will pull things like this where they don't really go with the obvious guy. But Van Ness is another guy kind of like Tyree Wilson who is going to, I think, shoot up a lot of draft boards just because of the tools and the potential. Eagles go Christian Gonzalez, cornerback, Oregon. I think that's the best case scenario for them, replenish that secondary a bit. Titans go Paris Johnson. They kind of miss out on trading up for a quarterback, which they're rumored to be doing. I don't really have them doing that in this one. Maybe in a future one, depending on how the rest of the next couple weeks pan out. Myles Murphy, like I talked about, to Houston. But the Titans need to go offensive line. Pair him up with Nicholas Petit-Frere, and you got tackles of the future, especially because they cut Taylor Lewan. Green Bay gets 2 out of 3 picks. First one going Brian Branch, safety. And then Michael Mayer, the tight end, to replace Robert Tonyan. A more complete tight end for Jordan Love to work with. In between there, the Patriots go Broderick Jones, tackle out of Georgia. Replace your old Georgia tackle with the new Georgia tackle. And then I like Peter Skoronski going to the Commanders. He can be a tackle. He might be able to move inside and play guard as well. I think you're just trying to get the best offensive lineman on the board. And with Eric Bieniemy coming in, you want to protect Sam Howell, who looks like he's going to be the quarterback. And I really think that's what Bieniemy came in to do in Washington, because they said Sam Howell's going to be our quarterback. And I think Bieniemy has a lot to prove, going from Patrick Mahomes to now Sam Howell and being like, no, I'm actually a really good offensive coordinator. It wasn't Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't Andy Reid. It was me. And I think that this is a real opportunity for him to prove that. But the best way to do that is to also make sure that your quarterback is protected, and that starts with the offensive line. And here's the feel-good pick of the draft. Joey Porter Jr. going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where his dad made a giant career, infamously playing for the Steelers. So a nice little full circle moment there. And with Porter off the board, I got the Lions going with Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. I think that he's just everything that, a Dan Campbell team would want. Here's the Giants trading up, seeing that the receivers were starting to fall. They make sure that they get their pick of the litter here with Quentin Johnston. This is the guy who they're hoping can be what Kenny Golladay was supposed to be. And I think trading up to get him will create now a run on receiver, as you see, with Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Seattle, and then Jordan Addison going to the Chargers with the potential of Keenan Allen getting cut looming. And then 2 guys who have sort of flown up draft boards recently towards the end of the college football season into the draft process. That's Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland, going to the Ravens, And then Kalijah Cansey, the interior defensive lineman, going to Pitt. Cansey has been mocked as high as the 8th overall pick in the draft that I've seen by some of the experts. I'm not sure he goes that high. I think that here towards the end of the first round is a good spot for him, mostly because I think teams are going to be trying to figure out what's the best way to use him on a defense. And I think that him going to Minnesota with Brian Flores now there, this is a real opportunity for Kalijah Cansey to be turned into, let's say, a Cameron Hayward type of interior defensive lineman that has been infamously of his size and stature. Also, there's the Aaron Donald comparisons, but I think that's just unfair, really. And here's Brian Breezy sort of collapsing down boards a bit. I've seen people mocking him in the 3rd round. I still think he's a first-round pick. He's somebody that's really hard to distinguish. He could be a top 10 guy, but he could also tumble this far, but he doesn't get past the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no way. He just would fit in so well with what they need in that front 7. They got Dalton Kincaid going to the Buccaneers in their trade down, grabbing someone for Kyle Trask, who apparently is going to be the guy there, according to Bruce Arians. Then Osiris Torrance, interior offensive lineman, going to the Cowboys. You put him right next to Tyler Smith, and you got a great young left side of the offensive line moving forward. Trenton Simpson going to the Bills. This is your replacement for Tremaine Edmonds. And here are the Rams going with Zay Flowers, wide receiver, Boston College, just taking the best receiver on the board. They were really hard-pressed for weapons last year, and I think that was a big reason why their offense didn't really execute all that well. So I think you bring in Zay Flowers, he's a different type of player. He's like a better version of Tutu Atwell. Then you got Mozzie Smith going to the Saints, help with that interior defensive line. Antonio Johnson going to the Eagles. He can play really all 5 positions in that secondary, so I think that would be really advantageous for the Eagles to add him as well. So now you've added Christian Gonzalez, you've added Antonio Johnson. You've got 2 really great pieces in there. You franchise tag Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and you still have Darius Slay, who you can maybe now start to age out with Christian Gonzalez now moving into that spot. James Bradbury's probably moving on soon. And you got a great replenishing there. And that's the key when you're a good team like the Eagles with a lot of depth. You have to replenish those spots as players age out. And they've done a good job of that so far, and I think this would really help them do that. And then the Chiefs go Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee, sneaking into the first round here towards the end, as they got a bunch of receivers on this roster who are having expiring contracts. So why re-sign them? Get some cheaper options who are probably going to produce just as well. Jalen Hyatt and Sky Moore together as a pairing could be quite interesting for Patrick Mahomes. Moving on to the second round here, and Anton Harrison going to the Steelers. They need offensive line help. I think this is the best case scenario for them. They got Tyreek Stevenson going to Houston. Got to pair him up with Derek Stingley. Could be a really great pairing. Then Cam Smith going to the Cardinals. They need front 4 and secondary. Covered that both for them here. The Colts get Josh Downs. This is your wide receiver 3, your slot guy going in there with Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman to pair up with Bryce Young. You got to commit to getting this quarterback going, get this offense going. Then you got Drew Sanders going to the Rams. Linebacker. This is the Bobby Wagner replacement. He's also a guy that can blitz quite well. So you're sort of getting 2 things here, more pass rush as well as gaining an inside linebacker. Then we got 2 picks out of 3 for Seattle. Keely Ringo, who was cornerback 1 going into the year and is going to fall down boards perhaps. He could have some good workouts that can get him back into the first round, but he is at risk here of falling. But I think that Seattle's going to really benefit from this, pairing him up with Tariq Woolen with Kobe Bryant in the slot. Wow. And then Siaki Ika, big-time space eater in the interior. With Emmanuel Forbes going to the Raiders. They need corner help with the Raiders. Helping with that pass defense. Getting some help on the back end to let Max Crosby and Chandler Jones actually do their thing up front. So this hopefully should help them. Grabbing Emmanuel Forbes, who might be corner 1 on this team starting. which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Up next is the Saints again, and they go Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver LSU. Pair him up with Chris Olave, with whoever your new quarterback is, say Derek Carr. Boom, perfect. Luke Musgrave, tight end, going to the Titans. Fills a decent need there for them. Helps out with across all facets of the offense. Nolan Smith going to the Browns. This is your replacement for Jadeveon Clowney. Darnell Wright going to the Jets. I have him written down as a tight end. I screwed that up. I'm sorry. Oh, if you guys watch this far, I'm sorry. But he is an offensive tackle, not a tight end. And he's going to be the protector for Aaron Rodgers. Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Falcons. Pair him up with Tyler Algier. And that's a great 1-2 punch for Arthur Smith's offense. Arthur Smith's offense relies a lot on that running game, and you got those two guys now with, I would say Desmond Ridder, give him a real chance unless you're trying to get Lamar Jackson. Really make sure that offense is functioning the way that you want to with the right personnel to give Desmond Ridder a real shot. Then I got Keon White going to the Packers. Another edge rusher in there. You know, Preston Smith will probably be on his way out. If not this year, then for sure next year. And you want someone with Rashawn Gary. You know, Kingsley Nagbari is a certain type of player. So you might have a nice little three-man group moving forward in the future. Darnell Washington going to the Patriots. Big, giant tight end. Also, like an extra offensive lineman. I can see Belichick being really, really interested in having that. And Clark Phillips III going to Washington, where they really need secondary help there as well. And Phillips is another guy who sort of had first-round potential, started to fall out of favor as guys like Devon Witherspoon, and then recently Deonte Banks sort of started to get a little bit more hype behind them. So the cornerback class is really, really good. So you're getting Clark Phillips here. I think Clark Phillips in most other drafts is a first-round guy. So this is a good pickup for Washington. Here are the lines going with Cody Mock, interior offensive lineman, North Dakota State. There's really only that one guard spot on this offensive line that they could really look to find a starter with. So I think Cody Mock would be a good choice for them. Tuli Tuipulotu, defensive lineman, USC. He's sort of like a hybrid, sort of like what we had with Logan Hall. You know, a bigger interior guy who can maybe be an edge guy. So I think that he would fit in well with Pittsburgh, with Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin likes to have those types of guys on his roster. Kyo Blue Kelly, cornerback, going to Tampa. They need cornerback help. They're going to be losing a couple guys in free agency. Deion Henley, linebacker, Washington. Again, maybe not the best at that position, but Seattle does this stuff. Seattle does this, and I got them doing it again. Sorry, not sorry. John Michael Schmidt, center, Minnesota, going to the Dolphins. I know Connor Williams did great as a center, but I think if you move him to guard, Michael Schmidt's the center, you've optimized your offensive line to get really the best five guys on the field that you possibly could have. Sam Laporta going to the Chargers. They need tight end, long-term tight end help as well. So, you know, at a receiver, at a tight end, you're really investing here in Justin Herbert. Nathaniel Tank Dell, wide receiver, Houston, going to the Chicago Bears. Why not? Why not grab another wide receiver? You got Darnell Mooney now with Chase Claypool, Nathaniel Dell, and then you got that Velus Jones, who's like that hybrid gadget type wide receiver. We got Keanu Benton, interior defensive lineman, Wisconsin, another guy to add in the trenches for Detroit. They're going to be doing a lot of that, I think, in a lot of drafts. It's just replenishing those trenches on the offensive defensive line. And here we are in the home stretch. We got Steve Avila going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and interior offensive lineman. He'll play guard for them, that left guard position. Jalen Jones going to the Giants. This is your cornerback 2 opposite of Adoree Jackson. DJ Turner, speaking of cornerback 2s, this is your Trayvon Diggs complement here for Dallas, who Giants and Dallas both need that cornerback 2 position solved and figured out going into next season, or it could be a real struggle for them. I got Tajay Spears, running back out of Tulane, going to the Buffalo Bills. Pair him up with James Cook with that running back room. they're going to need a running back in there. They're going to, Devin Singletary and I would think Nyheim Hines are both going to be gone from this team. So you need someone to complement James Cook. Tajay Spears comes in there. You got a good little 1-2 punch, I think. Then DeJuan Jones going to the Bengals. They need to get tackles. They need to get offensive linemen. Throw as much as you can at that position because that's really the only thing that they really need, especially in this scenario where you just acquired Jalen Ramsey in a trade. Protect Burrow. That's been the Achilles heel in so many of their failures that have come after such great seasons the last 2 years. And then we get a bit of a run here. Back-to-back edge rushers. B.J. Ojolari going to Carolina and Andre Carter II going to the Eagles. And then we got Matthew Bergeron on the tackle going to the Chiefs. Is Orlando Brown staying? Is he going? Andrew Wiley had a great run at right tackle. Is he somebody that you maybe can upgrade even though he did play great? Is he somebody that you might be more comfortable being like, okay, if we catch an injury, or we need like a rotation, he can play guard, he can play tackle. And even if he does start at right tackle still and you keep Orlando Brown, Bergeron can be there. So then if you do, he can be a depth guy and then maybe you're only keeping Orlando Brown for a year. There's a lot of ways that you can work this out, but I think having depth on the offensive line for a team as good as the Chiefs will be super important for them. And there it is, 2 rounds with some trades. What do you think about Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets? What do you think about Jalen Ramsey going to the Cincinnati Bengals? They got a lot of cap space, and I feel like I just used them up pretty well, and I guess that would mean Jesse Bates would be gone, which I think a lot of people are expecting at this point anyway, even though I think very highly of him. But leave your comments in the comment section what you think of the picks that I made, and I will see you guys with the next video next time, whenever that is. Stay tuned.